Welcome to another episode of the Flag Stays Down podcast. I don't know. Like I was telling the guys pre-pod, I was awake for all of about 6 hours this weekend, so I'm a little out of it. But you got myself, Andy. You got Parker. You got Matt. Parker, how you doing?
I was ready for you to call it the Yips edition because this is take four for getting an intro out. No, I'm good. I was just watching the Vikings game with my wife before I joined you fellas for the pod. So wasn't a great Packer weekend, but good Chelsea weekend. So I'll take that. And Chelsea play on a Tuesday when I'm off of work, and these things feels like never line up for me. So I will take that opportunity and enjoy watching my boys on Tuesday. So weekend was good. I smoked my first brisket, which didn't happen technically over the weekend, but was happy with how that turned out. And I also bought, this is where I nerd out on stuff, but I bought a vacuum sealer bag so I can like cut up half of it and then like seal it and freeze it so that I can just take it out and warm it up, and then I have brisket whenever the hell I want it. So trying to save food from going bad, because the wife and I, despite our best efforts, can't eat like 12 pounds of brisket straight up, just crush through that, the two of us. Little man isn't eating any solid foods yet, so he can't help out either. So uh geeking out over things like that, and trying to figure out how I can buy in bulk and now actually save some food for later and have it be easily prepped in the future. So that's what I spent some of my time. But this is week 2 of paternity leave, technically 3 of 4 now for me of paternity leave. So just been really hanging out with the little man and taking all that in, which has been lovely. Matt, how you doing, man? You're back to work. You're that kind of the opposite schedule of me.
Yeah, and nothing like being welcomed back to work. And the first after the first week, I get called on a Sunday night to investigate something. So that's always encouraging. But no, everything's going well. Yeah, weekend was good. Pretty laid back. Didn't do didn't do too much. It's been nice just to have a weekend of not doing anything, especially after the last few weekends of, finishing Miles's bed, getting the room painted, all that other stuff. So it's been nice just to kind of take a little bit of a break and relax. But yeah, I mean, all good. Can't complain too much, even though I will. But yeah, all good. Collins, it's good to see you somewhat vertical. I know you've been you know, catching up on some sleep, whether willingly or unwillingly. But it's good to see you back. How you feeling?
Well, it's been an interesting weekend. Starting Thursday, my son had been walking with a limp after basketball for a couple days, and developed a fever. So of course the doctor thinks it's osteomyelitis or something like that. It's a bone infection, which I guess in kids can like stunt their ability to walk forever. So they're like, okay, you need to go to urgent care. So we spent all night in urgent care just for them to determine, no, he just has a fever and a strained muscle. Okay, cool. So we get home Friday. My wife gets sick. Okay, cool. Saturday, wake up and I'm sick. So now we all have a fever. So I watched the Chelsea game, and then I went back to bed, and I pretty much slept until last night. So yeah, no, it's been a weekend, but glad the part that I was awake uh, was one where I could watch Chelsea win a ball game. So good on that. So boys, let's start there because I think that's the happy note of this pod. Going up against League Two strugglers Morcambe, I don't know. 5-0. Kind of a rough first half, you could say. Didn't really have our best shooty boots, but onslaught late in the second half to seal qualification for the fourth round. Matt, we'll start with you. What are your first impressions?
Frustrating first half. Um, I think we were all kind of in that realm. Like, yeah, we had a lot of the really good opportunities, but just a lot of missed opportunities. And given our recent form, you just kind of thought is this going to be one of those games, right? Like, we're close on some chances. Disasi had two like very close headers and damn near open headers and just skied them. It's like, great. Are we going to be the team that gets upset, by the team 87, places below them in English football? Um, and you kind of thought that. But then just second half is what you expect, right? The what you expect on paper, right? Chelsea fourth in the table, Morecambe, who is close to being a non-league team, if their form keeps up, you expect just kind of an ass kicking, and that's what we finally got. Um, I granted it's lesser competition, but still, we always talk about you have to handle your business. Granted, and we see Arsenal, right? Granted, they had two Premier League teams in their competitions, but either way, like, handle your business. They're damn near out of both right now, right? So it easily could have gone a different way, especially with our first half. But I think whatever happened in the second half, we figured it out and we rose to the occasion, and we took care of a side that we easily should have taken care of, and we did. I just wish it would have been a more full 90 kind of dominant possession where the form that we've seen over the last few weeks didn't really carry into the first half. I would have liked to see it from the front foot. Maybe I'm asking for too much, but I would have just liked to have seen that just kind of from the get-go, and just kind of start things off earlier.
See, and I don't know what has happened this year. I wasn't worried. I I wasn't frustrated by any of it. I felt like I was taking the calmer approach than my other two co-hosts at the beginning of this match. Um, we had, I think, 13 shots in the first half. Yes, one on target. I understand that. Disasi missed a couple open headers. Um, but looking at it kind of on the macro, you're kind of playing 10v11. Christopher Nkunku was non-existent on the pitch. I think he had maybe 3 touches in the first half. Last time I looked, maybe it was 3 or 4. Um, yeah, no, it was good. They created plenty of chances. It wasn't Graham Potter ball where it was just passing the ball around in a big U just to hold possession. So I knew the goals would come. Ultimately, they did come. Joao Felix, I think, balled out. I think he showed exactly why he needs to be in that starting 11, week in and week out. But I think some stock on some other guys fell, just as equally. And talking specifically about Christopher Nkunku.
Positive was seeing Reece James get a start after not playing for a long time and instantly providing a great ball into the box to the aforementioned Disasi, who didn't do well with it. But God, you remember so quickly how good Reece can be on the ball, and how I don't think this was anywhere near his best game back. I think he only played 45 minutes or so, but great to see him kind of come back, which is needed. You touched on Nkunku. I thought Gu didn't have his best game, which was frustrating. I was really cheering for him to score. And yeah, I'll just kind of like echo the sentiment of this. I don't think our prior form carries into this game, because this is our full B team. This is 10 changes from our last match. This is our Europa League team for the most part, and except for what's his name, Mudryk, because he is suspended. But Mudryk was the other player that's been playing in the Conference League consistently. So it's good to see Tyreek George get a trot out there. I thought he looked pretty good for the most part. Veiga looked decent. Tosin had his shooty boots on, scored twice and hit the post once, which I thought he played, a lot better than I've given him credit for this year. But then Jorgensen, a guy that we thought could challenge for the number one keeping job, really didn't look comfortable. It really was a cementing Robert Sanchez kind of a thing where, this would have been a great chance for him to ball out and really own and command what would have been a sort of a non-existent day to do it. Not a good day to look shaky and to drop balls and to not be able to kind of command your area. I think he saw a few shots, but none of them looked super challenging. None of them looked like they were really going to give him an effort for it. And so for him to look shaky in that moment really gives me pause of my thoughts on him being able to challenge for the starting keeping job. It is funny though, because I watched this match with my wife, and I've told her about, the structure of the FA Cup before. She's well aware of how it all works. And so her first question is, how far down are these guys? Where are they on the table? And I said, put it this way: Wrexham is a lot higher than them. Wrexham, I think last time I checked, top 3 of League One, looking to get promoted into the championship, versus a team was in the league. Wrexham was in last year, but fighting against relegation. So kind of to give you scope and scale of where this team is. Great result. Good end of the day that we kept a clean sheet. Good that we scored the 5 goals. Wasn't as confident as you, Collins, of us getting there, especially considering our first goal was a complete fluke, complete deflected ball that trickles in. But I think that the guys did make an adjustment, and the center backs did kind of force the issue a little bit more in the second half, which is what was needed, and it's what helped kind of create things. The one thing I'll push back on is I don't think this or any Conference League performance tells me that Joao deserves to start week in and week out in the Premier League because of the competition. I've yet to see Joao do this against teams that really put pressure on them. And you can see how Cole Palmer has had to adjust his game where he doesn't get a lot of space, where he gets maybe a touch before he's crowded around by people. Felix has a lot of space and time to make things happen, which is crucial for his game to be able to kind of dipsy do and work around people. So I like what I see out of him. I thought he had a great game. It just doesn't give me the confidence that it can translate into, mid to top level Premier League talent.
Well, let me.
So what I'll say real quick on that is, so I'll kind of split the difference. To me, I think it brings him more into the conversation about that left side, or even the right side for that matter, right? Like kind of either side. No side is really cemented yet. I think it brings him probably more into that conversation of maybe he should get more of a look than, Neto or Noni or Sancho. I, do I think he should start? I think you kind of have to depend. I think he's, Parker, to your point, I think he's one of those players that depending on who you're going up against, yes, he can have an impact. But if you're going up against like a high pressing team or something like that where he's not going to have a lot of space, then I don't know if he's really going to be the best fit in that matchup. But we see the positives. We know the kind of shots that he can produce, right? So I definitely think that he's more in the conversation after this match than he has been, in the last month or so.
Well, let me ask you this about Joao then. I understand, the way he plays certainly looks like he needs space, right? He's not like Mudryk coming out of Ukraine, where he's kind of a relative unknown. He's not Estevao coming out of the Brazilian league. He's played for how many years in La Liga? A handful at this point, where he has pretty consistently played well. Not Neymar, Messi, Ronaldo levels, but in that next tier of La Liga players, I would say. And I look at his numbers from last year at Barcelona. 2 out of his 7 league goals were against the highest pressing team in La Liga, and that was Atletico Madrid. I think it's there. I think it can be, and especially I'll back up. The reason I say he can make it in to a starting 11, or at least get into a rotation in that starting 11. Noni Madueke continues to have issues, training issues. There was just a presser today, or maybe it was yesterday. My days are all mixed up. Maresca mentioned once again how Noni is one of the best players on this team. But if you got to be the best player, if you're going to be the best player on this team, you have to train like you're one of the best players on this team. He's consistently not doing that. And so I think Joao is an easy fix right there. Give Joao a run of 2, 3, 4 matches. Let Noni kind of sulk and pout and do what he needs to do, and see if he comes back stronger for it.
See, I don't see him playing on the wing. I don't see him taking like Noni's spot in the way we currently line up. I don't see him going on the left or right wing. I see him playing where Enzo Fernandez plays. So midfielder and then up in attack, which is kind of we lined up somewhat differently against Morcambe, where we had just Lavia as our kind of lone holding mid, and then we had four midfielders across, and then a striker. So he was, second from the left on that diagram, which is where Enzo plays an attack. When we have the ball and Caicedo kind of dominates the holding position. So I see him playing there. But do I see him playing over Enzo? I think he can rotate with Enzo, sure. I can think he can rotate with Cole Palmer. I think that's where he needs to be. Where I fear it is defensive liability sort of in transition and getting back and playing defense. And especially if you were to play on the wing, being able to get up and down that right wing or left wing. I don't see him being able to have that in his bag for 90 minutes.
Let's talk about another player who has gotten some of that flack for being a good player but not training hard, and now has asked for a transfer, or now submitted a transfer request, and that's Renato Veiga. 6 months into a 7+1 contract after his summer move from FC Basel. Veiga has handed in that transfer request saying he would like to play more center back. That's something Chelsea can't offer him. Boys, what's going on there?
So I have two comments about that. You guys follow this a lot more closely than I do. So I'm kind of just hearing that right now. So really, we can't try and slot him in at center back. I find that to be bullshit. Just flat out bullshit. The second is kind of what we were talking about in our group chat. Like, we know Chills is going to be out the door. Wherever he's going to go still kind of remains up in the air, but he's not in the plans. He hasn't even been on the team sheet. He's probably been training with the U21s the whole season. He's your number 2 behind Cucurella. I think it's a selfish move. But at the same time, if we handle this smart, I think we would be okay because the report that I think we were all seeing was going to Dortmund on a loan with option to buy. I think you eliminate the option to buy and you just send him on loan and see what happens, because he's still young. You can still, if all of a sudden this doesn't work out, let's say he wants to stay with Dortmund, whatever, and he wants to be transferred, fine. But we can still profit off that and then use those funds to go get another left back or something like that. I don't like it from a Chelsea standpoint as far as letting him go, because we know what our wing backs look like. Gusto has had, a couple knocks, and with the way that he plays sometimes with that inverted wing back, he's up and down the pitch. It's going to be tough to do, especially now. If you start thinking about schedule, you're now in 4 competitions, right? Premier League, FA Cup, the Carabao Cup, and then conference. Or Carabao already?
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay,
Newcastle.
But either way, you're in 3, right? Which is more than just the Premier League, last year, right? So we know that Gusto and Cucurella are your normal starters, provided that Reese is probably going to be injured given his last 2.5 years. Who else do you have to back him up? Right? You really don't have a backup. Chills is gone. I think Veiga will get minutes because they won't be able to do that. I think it's a wrong move on his part to try and ask for a loan, but I don't want Chelsea just to give in just because he wants to do this. Just kind of be like, no, you're going to be our number 2 left back behind Cucurella because Chilwell is gone. And with our schedule you're going to need to play more. Like, I think ultimately that's how it's going to work. So, and I don't necessarily know what it looks like for us going and getting a left back. I haven't really seen much. We've talked about kind of our needs and things like that. That just adds to another need that we would want, and what is still being a relatively quiet transfer period so far for Chelsea. So I have concerns about that. If we have a solution as far as a backup, I think you do your best to try and keep him. If for whatever reason it still doesn't work out, then you loan him and then try and turn him for profit in the summer or next January. I don't think you let him go just kind of flat out. I think you give him a chance to grow a little bit and just kind of bump his stock up and then go from there.
See, and I say just cut him loose. You get an offer you like, let him go. I've seen multiple times in my fandom of Chelsea the player who doesn't want to be here, the player who wants minutes at another position, wants minutes somewhere else, wants to play closer to home, whatever. And then we hold on to him, and it doesn't end well. It kills any kind of locker room vibe. It kills any kind of team spirit. And with a team being so young, and I assume impressionable. I mean, the reports were this week that Tosin is got the nickname of Uncle Tosin because he's the senior player on this team.
Mhm.
And he's only 26, 27. So for one of the kids, the many kids, to demand a transfer, let him go. You don't want to be part of this project. You were told when you were signed what the project was. I assume there was a pitch made to you when a contract was offered, and you signed on to it. If you don't want to be here, fuck off. It's just like Rom. Um, Now, with that being said, I understand the depth issues. I do. But, Matt, I will counter that with your same argument. Well, we're only in 3 competitions now. The Conference League is going to be spaced out, presuming that we progress, um, far into the tournament. It's every other week or every third week or something like that. And then the FA Cup is pretty much once a month, assuming we progress in that as well. And so really you're not playing twice a week as often as you were in the first half of the season. Um, I think we can be fine, assuming Reece James stays moderately, and I put the emphasis there, moderately healthy. You've got him, you've got Gusto covering both wings, and you've got Achimpong back there as well, who can fill in. Axel Disasi is another one who's rumored to be going, but he can play right back in a pinch. Levi Colwell can play left back in a pinch. I think the system honestly works better using 3 center backs if we had 3 center backs. So I think the priority there, instead of going out and signing a direct replacement, would be to go out and sign a center back, which is funny because the guy wants to play center back. I think that's just it. It's kind of a ruse, is what I'm thinking. Parker, what do you think?
I feel like this all stinks and something isn't being talked about in the media yet because something feels off with all of this. A dude who's young, who signs a 7-year contract with a team 6 months later after not getting minutes, even though he's played a good amount. Like, he hasn't featured in the Premier League, sure, but neither has Joao Felix. Like, one of these things is not like the other. Neither has Nkunku. Neither has Mudryk. Like, neither has a lot of players. Neither has Kieran Dewsbury Hall, who has more experience than him. So, like, there's a lot of names that haven't featured in the Premier League for us. He's one of like our fringe players. I look at him versus Carney Chukwuemeka. He's gotten way more looks than Carney Chukwuemeka has. And I think Carney is more Premier League proven than him, considering how much he played last year for us. Something stinks about this because, who the fuck is this guy to come in and then start asking all these questions? I either, blame him for having a crap attitude about the whole thing of, the other thing that was talked about besides playing center back was, well, I want to get minutes so that the Portuguese national team can see what I can do, and they've been looking at me and whatnot, and I got my first couple call ups. It's like, dude, the only reason why the Portuguese national team is looking at you is because you've been playing for Chelsea. because they've been watching what you can do with our team. That's the only reason you've gotten a sniff. You weren't on their radar before this. So it's like something really, irks me about all of this. And the other thing is that I'm going to, until proven otherwise, put blame on is Maresca, because something wasn't communicated then from Maresca to him of expectations of what your role is, what your minutes are going to look like. And when someone's upset about, how they've been treated 6 months into a long-term deal, like, then communication may have been the issue up front. And I don't know that to be true. I'm just throwing it out as an option of something has to be wrong in all of this. Something doesn't feel right to me. And I'm with you, man. If the guy wants out, fucking let him go. But I am worried about, we sign people and we move pieces around the chessboard, knowing what we have. And then if someone wants out, we can't just let them go that second. We have to build contingency plans. Right now, I'm afraid of our contingency plans, considering Gusto's had injury issues, James has had injury issues, Cucurella has had disciplinary issues, but we don't have to talk about that. But there's going to be people that need to be subbed in and out. And I don't think 3 somewhat healthy people is good enough for it. I think if he does end up going, then I want him gone, with an obligation to buy. And I want that number to be in the mid 20s. Like, I want Dortmund to be like, no, this is our guy and we'll pay for him. And, here's what we'll give you for it. I don't want it to be a bidding thing. I don't want it to be a maybe. If he wants to go, let him go. But, we can make a quick buck on it, which I'm not mad about. And if he doesn't want to be there, I'm not mad about him going. I just think like the situation stinks. And we've, built things around players and have backups in place for reasons. So I don't like people just getting to call their shot and say, I tried this for 6 months. I'm done. I don't like this anymore. And I would like to go. Like, cool, we'll work with you, but you got to give us, some time in the meantime to figure this out. Because the reports that I was reading is when Maresca was asked about this, they said like, hey, it sounds like Veiga has terms agreed with Dortmund. He's like, I don't know about that. So, it seems like some of this was going on backdoor, right? And that Maresca was a little bit out of the know. What we get told, I have no idea how accurate all of it is. I don't know who's telling the truth where and what. And I don't know if that is true with Dortmund. It could just be smoke, right? But that's very interesting to hear that, Maresca was kind of hearing about the agreed terms for the first time when a presser gets asked about it.
Sorry, the other quick thing is I'm worried about the precedent that this sets going forward. If we're at a point right now where these younger players can start calling their own shot, that's going to end up being, I think, a massive issue going forward. We're 6 months into Maresca, and already there are 2 people that are going to be out the door after 6 months. And they're driving it themselves, right? It's the players who are driving it, not the manager. To me, that I have concerns about that, because kind of what we're talking about. If Veiga signs a 7-year deal, 6 months into it, he's like, yeah, no, I want to do something different. I understand fine, we'll help you do what you need to do just to get out of here. That's great. But think about it from the rest of the team or anybody else who might not be happy, right? Let's say, we end up in a situation where, with Noni, I'm not happy, I'm not playing, so I'm leaving, right? Like, whatever. I know he's kind of more of a homegrown or whatever, but let's say it's somebody like Pedro Neto or something like that, right? You're here for 6 months and then you just up and leave, right? Because you don't like things. I think that sets a bad precedent going forward, and it needs to be maintained, like kind of who's in charge. And I think this instance of kind of having the players control that narrative is a little off-putting, especially so early into this kind of into Maresca's 5-year contract, right? 6 months in, there are already signs of players starting to kind of call their own shot. So I'm fine with a couple of scenarios like that, but this early on and with a couple people, it's a little bit worrisome.
No, and see, I'm not as worried because I think with a squad of our size, this was bound to happen. Um, Especially not playing in the Champions League, right? So these guys are playing in the Conference League, which you both have acknowledged is not like a real competition, right? Um, so I, I think more importantly, the precedent is being set here that if you're a young guy and you come to Chelsea and you put in work, you're going to improve. I look at Cole Palmer, you look at Mark Cucurella, Nicholas Jackson, um, Pedro Neto is kind of already established. Mudryk was on the upswing until his suspension. Moises Caicedo, I think, has exceeded his transfer value. Um, so, honestly, I think what we're seeing here is a response to a couple weeks ago when Veiga was left off the squad completely with Noni Madueke for quote unquote non-technical reasons. They had shit weeks in training or they broke some curfew. I don't know exactly what the reason was, but they're both left out for 2 matches. I think Veiga's thrown a little hissy fit here because up until today, pretty much, it's been a non-issue with him. He's been a great squad player. Talk about guys in the dressing room loving him and all that. No, this is him being a selfish player, and I think that's going to be outed pretty quickly here.
Yeah, it's to me, it's more the optics, right? From our perspective on the outside, right? If these things are happening and Maresca has no idea about them, like he's getting caught off guard about this stuff, that's not a good look, right? Just straight up optics of it, right? Your manager has no idea that these moves are happening or that they're even being talked about. Personal terms have been agreed, blah, blah, blah. The manager has no clue. That's not good optics for Chelsea at all. And that's a little bit problematic. Granted, Chelsea loves controversy. We know that. We live it all the time, right? We did everything was going well until Mudryk, and then we're like, yeah, we're back. There had to be something. It was going too well. But again, it's just the optics, right? Players are making their own deals under the manager's nose, and they have no idea what's going on. So it's a very interesting and weird dynamic.
You know what I just was thinking about, which is the wrong decision, but the petty decision part of me says, we paid 14 million for Veiga. He's 21 years old and he's on a 7-year contract. We can let you rot. Like we can just fucking destroy your career.
Can Danny Drinkwater you?
Yeah. Right.
Well,
And like when you
he kind of did that to himself.
drink
Water.
like when it's Rom and it's 80 million, hard to do, right? When you're eating a salary that's his size, one of the top paid players on the team, and when you paid out the nose for him. Like if you want to make an example of a player, you throw a fit, we'll just destroy your career. You signed a 7-year deal and you are accountable for your 7-year deal. Like you agreed to that. You agreed to the terms, you agreed to the length, you agreed to everything. Paid 14 million bucks for the rights to your contract, negotiated with him. So could be one that we could just make it a true example out of a dude and be like, look, you can sit and train with the 21-year-olds all you want. That's fine.
Well, another
Or
guy who
or just Victor Moses him and just send him out on loan every single year.
send him to Siberia.
Yeah. I mean, we could be like, yeah, you're going to go on loan again this year. That makes you 5 times in a row. Congratulations. We could. That's a great point, Parks. It's not a big contract. Why not? Maybe he finally figures it out and it's like, oh, I can probably turn some stuff around here and do whatever, and then it ends up working out in our favor. But either way, it's not a big issue for us just to kind of let him hang out.
Well, another player who's in a similar boat, who has not told the manager he wanted to leave, but then went and discussed and agreed to personal terms with German giants Bayern Munich. It's Christopher Nkunku. Rumor is, as of today, potential swap move for Matthias Tell the 19-year-old winger slash striker from France. He's got a handful of goals already in the Bundesliga. So, boys, what do you make of Nkunku's situation? And does Tell do it for you or no?
I don't know enough about Tell. The difference for me about this one is there was a lot more smoke around Nkunku. Nkunku's a bigger, higher profile player, and I think we all kind of thought he wasn't going to be okay with the role that he was given in our team, and he hasn't been able to crack through. And so it's an interesting one. It's again, I don't know enough about Tal as a player to see if he does it for me, but I looked him up, Collins, and I didn't see any goals this year. So am I missing something? I saw 7 appearances, no goals in the Bundesliga this year.
No, he's been used primarily as a sub this year. He did start quite a bunch last year, 7 goals in 30 appearances, and then the year before, 5 goals in 22.
The thing I like about him is he's younger. It kind of fits the bill of the characteristics of our guys. The thing I read about him that gives me a little worry is he's shot happy, a la akin to Tony Madueke. Like he shoots more than he doesn't shoot, and that doesn't tend to work well in our team. So, yeah, he's an interesting one to consider. We need help on the left wing. He probably fits our system a little bit better. But I'll just say what I said to you guys in the group chat, and that's if we're negotiating with Bayern, I'd rather get a left back of Alphonso Davies. If the Veiga stuff is true and it's going to happen, I'd rather negotiate with them over that need because I think it's a bigger need for us than replacing Mudryk on the left wing, because I think we've got competent wingers. They're not my favorite wingers in the world, but they're competent, and I think we need a little bit more help on that left back position.
I'm like, you guys have to remind me, did Nkunku come on a free?
Nope.
What was his price tag?
About 50 million.
So I'm a little, and so this is kind of what FFP has done. It's made me a little bit more leery about straight up swap deals because to me, I don't think you necessarily recoup that money, right? So if we paid 50 mil for Nkunku, even if we do a swap deal, we still have to figure that out. Yes, it's the wages are off the books, but you still paid the 50 mil to even get him in, and you don't know what. I know Tell is like 30 million pound transfer market value, but you don't know if that's going to actually equate. So I think that's kind of the issue I have with now doing a straight up swap deal is we've already done our part to getting Nkunku to Chelsea. So that's added. If it's just a swap, all you're doing is basically swapping wages, but you're still out that 50 that you needed to even get Nkunku to come here. So I'm a little bit leery on that. And so essentially you're kind of taking a whatever you want to call it, like a 50 million pound flyer on, a 19-year-old who is doing okay with Bayern, but it's also Bayern. They usually dominate the Bundesliga anyways, with the exception of last year. So I don't know. It seems a little risky to just do a straight up swap. If it's a swap plus cash, I'm fine with that. That can balance out more. But a straight up swap, I don't know how I feel about that.
So I'm not too worried about the FFP on Nkunku. He's 2 years into his 6-year contract. And I looked it up. It was $60 million. So he's got about $40 million left in amortization. He was one of the last ones that was allowed to be extended past 5 years. So 40 million. I mean, yeah, Tell probably wipes that out. I would say going for a 19-year-old who has 12 goals before he turns 20 in the Bundesliga, as well as almost double-digit assists, primarily playing as a sub. I think that does it. I'm looking at some of his advanced metrics. He does shoot the ball a lot, but his accuracy is crazy high. His shots on target is about 88th percentile in Europe's top 5 leagues. So talk about Noni, him not being accurate, Nico not being accurate. I'll take a guy who shoots a lot if he's accurate, and he gives you something a little bit more dynamic, I would say. A guy who can slot in for Nico. We've been saying for a while, you need somebody to back up Nico, but also somebody who can fill in for Mudryk or whoever is on that left wing um, while he's suspended. So I, I'm all for it. It's a good move, and it gets a disgruntled player off the books. So one more that's been rumored, that's Carney Chukwuemeka. Also, personal details have been. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I am medication brain farting here. He's been agreed. It's all been agreed with Dortmund. The only hangup is Chelsea want either just a straight loan or a loan with an obligation, and Dortmund want a well, maybe we'll buy. So that is the hold up there. But boys, Carney Chukwuemeka is a guy that I was very excited about when we signed. How are you feeling about his potential departure?
More okay than I thought I would be, if I'm honest. I think Carney had a ceiling. We all looked at him as, a good player. Had some injuries that didn't help his case, but I feel like, the the mark of a good team is that guys like him just don't really have positions for us long term. And that's what's hard, because I liked him as a player. Thought he did well for us as a player. Um, but I just don't see where he can fit in. I don't know where he even plays as a backup, to be completely honest. So, when we, again, using Joao Felix as an example, like if guys like Joao Felix are struggling to get minutes and guys like Christopher Nkunku are struggling to get minutes, guys like Carney Chukwuemeka just don't have a shot. They're further down the pecking order than all those guys. And our midfield is pretty solid, pretty tough to break into. And the guys that we've got are young, dynamic, and strong. So I think it's a tough ask. And if we can get something for him, I think we should.
So I'm gonna reference this player, but I'm not gonna compare him. This seems like a very similar situation to Kevin De Bruyne when he was at Chelsea. He was fourth or fifth on the depth chart. We had a very solid midfield. We just couldn't play him. Like, and he needed to go somewhere else to grow, develop, and then he turned into a world-class talent. We all know how that whole thing unfolded. I think it's kind of a similar trajectory, right? We have too much of a good thing. Our midfield is very tough to get into, and it's just hard to find. It's hard to find a spot for him. And I think he does still have all the potential in the world. I don't think he's even come close to his ceiling. We've seen the good out of him, although it's been in bursts because he's had injury issues, and then you bring in a huge influx of new players that kind of fill his role. It just puts him in a tough spot. So I could see a very similar trajectory of just kind of letting him go. He's going to grow. He's probably going to be. He might be even one of those we let go too early, but I think it's a case where he needs to go somewhere else and actually play consistently in order to get, his full, in order to reach his full potential. So I see it in a very similar light to KDB, but again, not comparing him to KDB.
Yeah, and I think from a transfer standpoint, it's more like Ian Matson, a guy who has a lot of talent, but no place in this team to show it. So I think Carney going to Dortmund, I think that's a great move for him. I would love to see a 6-month loan on that. I feel bad for him because that knee injury against what was it, Aston Villa last year, I think fucked his career. Not necessarily that he's never going to be the same player again, but I don't think he's going to get the same opportunities that he got before that. He was out for quite a while after that, and it took a long while for him to get back to the player that he was. We only paid 20 million pounds for him. So send him out on loan for 6 months, and absolutely, I think you can get what Chelsea are asking, which I think the last I saw was like 38 mil. I mean, you're doubling what you got. This is what we talked about when we talked about this project. is you buy a bunch of lottery tickets, you buy low, and you sell high, and then it's forever sustainable. Never
The
have to
one
worry
close.
about never have to worry about FFP.
It's true. If we can keep that up, that's wonderful, right? The one thing I'll just looked up Carney just for fun, and he is only 21. He feels a lot older than 21 because he featured as a 19-year-old, which is so interesting when you put it in perspective. Like, what kind of a player might he be in 3 years when he's 24, which is kind of the mean age of guys right now, 22 to 24 years old. So again, hard to compare. And I think to your point, Collins, that knee injury did him a lot of bad, but I don't think it ruined his career just because he still hypothetically still has a lot of career, longevity ahead of him if he can stay healthy. So best of luck to him. I hope he does well. I just don't see it for us.
Well, tomorrow we resume league action, uh, playing against Bournemouth. And boys, I saw an interesting little tidbit on that today. If we beat Bournemouth, we move 11 points clear in the same fixtures from Pochettino last year. Then, yeah, again, I apologize. Not my best night to host, but move 11 points clear of Pochettino's Chelsea. Uh, how do you think we fare against Bournemouth tomorrow?
They're an interesting team. They're they're one of those teams that are just kind of a thorn in the side. Like it's I don't want to call it a trap game because it's not. Like we should be going at every team, but they're in seventh. So like they're playing very well right now. Um I think we need to be ready to play. If not, then I think this could easily go south very quickly. Um this is, I think, one of those scenarios where if we don't jump on them early, then I think Bournemouth is going to grow into the game, and that's going to be problematic for us. But that being said, say 2-1 Chelsea.
This game makes me very, very nervous. This is one where, I hope Stamford Bridge is rocking and can help kind of like will the team on, which historically hasn't been the MO of the bridge to will it on. But I'm hoping a midweek game is less touristy and has the ability to be more of a home kind of contingent, supporting, cheering, chanting. And I've seen more of that from our traveling fans too. When we're on away games, you can hear more Chelsea chants, which has been positive, and you've heard more of Stamford Bridge kind of find its voice this year. What worries me is that, looking backwards on Bournemouth's wins or their schedule, they've beaten United, they've beat Tottenham, they've beat City, they've beat Arsenal this year. So, they're in seventh or something like that this year. So they're clearly not second in the league. They're there for a reason, which means they've got some not great losses, but they've got the chances and the ability to beat good teams, which scares me. So I'm predicting a draw in this one. I think if we get away with a draw in this one, I think we'll be all right.
Boys, in a fever-induced dream, I woke up in a cold sweat, and I was dreaming about this match. Nicholas Jackson scored our sixth goal to make it 6-0 in the 90th minute. I don't know why that's the only part I remember, but I remember a big old 6. So that's what I'm going with. Fuck this fever. It can at least give me something.
What kind of
Wait,
medicine do you take? That's what I want to know.
Timu medicine.
Yeah, it must be.
I think it's
Six
called
is,
ketamine.
six is ambitious. I mean, I'll give it to you. I like it, but
I
six,
love it. I love
good.
it. And if it happens, you're not getting better. You're just gonna
You're
you're
gonna
gonna
have to
stay
be
on what you're
subbed
on.
the rest of the season.
Just constant injections of COVID.
Exactly.
All right, boys. Well, I am going to cut it short a little bit tonight. As you can tell, I am not on top of my game and I am out of topics. So any closing thoughts for the evening?
You're up for a fun one tomorrow.
Liam Delap to Chelsea. That's my closing thought.
I like it. We'll make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. And you know what? We got one more surprise segment. That's our man of the match. Make sure to follow us on social media at Flag Down Pod. Boys, who's your man of the match? We got Tyreek George, Joao Felix, Tosin, or other.
Felix.
I'll give it to Tosin. We've been shitting on him a lot this pod. He had a good performance. I'll give it to him.
I also went Felix, but I'm going to give shout outs to the others. It was Cucurella, which I'm always fond of, and then Matt with the write-in of Reece James not getting injured. I think that was an underrated nominee. Felix and Tosin tied for the win, which I think is pretty fitting. I don't know if I could separate those two. Well, again, make sure to check all that out on our social media at Flag Down Pod. Boys, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to remembering talking to you guys next week.
Up to Chelsea. Later, boys.
Later.